I'm curious to get your opinion on what the devil symbolizes, or Satan.
Yeah, Satan. So the word, I mean, you could look at the words. The words are useful to understand it. And so the word Satan means the opponent, right? And the word devil comes from the Greek, which means the divider or the accuser. And that's a good way to kind of understand what the evil one is, or what role the evil one plays in the cosmology, like in the cosmic image, which is it's the dividing aspect of the world, right? So you have, let's say, we're all together united in love in God, but there's an aspect of that which is multiplicity, right? So in order for things to exist, there always has to be multiplicity. There's multiplicity, but it's joined together in a pattern towards unity. And then the devil divides. The devil will divide you, will pull you away from multiplicity, will oppose the unity, and will divide the body into its elements, right? And so that's the devil. So there's a cosmic devil. Obviously, there's this image of the, if you look at the mythology surrounding the devil, which is not in the Bible actually, but it is kind of all kind of infused into Christianity, the idea that the highest angel took the value that it had to itself, right, and thought that because of that value, it was the highest principle. It's like, I am God, I will be God, I'll be higher than the highest, right? And in doing that, opposes its origin, and also then by doing that, then falls and divides and falls into multiplicity, right? So you can apply that principle to anything. It's a structure of any kind of participation you have. So think about a company, and then someone in the company, I don't know, like some agent in the company, instead of serving the purpose of the company, decides that they deserve it. Like it's for them. Like they're the ones who deserve everything they're doing. And what they end up doing is now they end up acting on their own, right? They oppose the purpose of the company, and then they corrupt their organization, and then they end up bringing about the downfall and the breakdown of that organization because they're pulling resources away from the purpose, right? I mean, think about like a corrupt, like a corrupt police officer, right? That's what the corrupt police officer is doing, right? He's using his position to gather power to himself instead of serving the higher good and the higher organization. And in doing that, he's actually breaking down the order of society, right? By dividing the resources and turning things against each other, right? And so it's a structure of reality. So Satan and the devil you can see that occurring in any body that you can recognize as having unity.
Yeah, I'm thinking of if like part of the yin yang tried to exit the yin yang, that would be very demonic.
Well, exactly. And so
yeah.
It's interesting though, but it's good to think about that because the St. Maximus the Confessor, who's one of my favorite church fathers, he talks about what he calls the sins of the right hand and the sins of the left hand, right? And you could say that the fall or the breakdown of the yin yang starts with an excess of yang, right? Actually starts with an excess of identity, where it's pride, right? That's the beginning. It's like you think, oh, I've got it all. Like I've got it all. And so it's self-sufficiency, it's pride, it's arrogance, it's all these things. That's the beginning. So he says the sin starts with the right hand and manifests itself as pride, as self-sufficiency, as arrogance. But then as soon as you do that, it breaks apart, right? Things break apart. And then the left-hand sins come in and take over. And so it starts with pride and then ends in darkness, ends in yin. It ends in like the shattering of the body. So you can understand it as an excess of the play of the two, where it's too much of one, and then that leads to too much of the other, and then you have a breakdown.
Right. It's like the lesson in the Bible where when you do a good deed, don't let your left hand know what your right hand's doing.
Yeah, it's a good example. You don't want your good deed to cause pride in you, because that pride in you is preventing the good deed from serving that which is serving in the first place. Right? In theory, the purpose of a good deed is the good. But if the purpose of the good deed is just to get glory for myself, then at some point the value of that good deed will start to break down. And we see that, I mean, obviously we see that all the time in organizations, in governments, and in anything that we're involved with.
Yeah, we see that everywhere. Just before leaving the devil talk, I'm curious to know why the goat's head or the ram's head is been associated with the devil.
Yeah.
I never understood that.
You never understood why the goat's head. So, I mean, there are many reasons why it's understood that way. One is the image that Christ describes, because he talks about the left and the right hand. Right. And so Christ says to the sheep in his allegory, in his parable, he says to the sheep, come into the kingdom. Right. So the right hand is the hand of unity. So he says to the sheep, come into the kingdom, come into the unity of the body. And then he says to the goats, move away, like go away from the unity of the body. Go into the chaos. Right. That's one. That the second is what's called the Yom Kippur sacrifice. So in the Bible there are two sacrifices on the Day of Atonement. One is a sheep, a lamb, or a goat that's offered up to God, and the other is a goat that you put all the sins on, and you cast it out of the city. It's the scapegoat. And so that's the symbolism of Satan has become the symbolism of the scapegoat, the one that has all the multiple sins, all the misfirings, all the excess, all the exceptions, all of the things that don't fit in society are taken on by the opposer and the divider, right? You could see how the logic is completely logical, because the sins are that which divide. The sins don't hit the target. They're wily. They're in all directions. So you don't want the sins, right, in the body, because the sins are moving away from the purpose of the body, right? And so you put the sins on the goat, and then the goat gets cast out. And so that goat then becomes an image of the opposer and the divider, which is the image of the devil. So that's how all of that kind of came together. It's very unconscious. The story of the image of the goat head on Satan is very wily. It would be too much to go into here, but it's quite interesting to see how it's rather unconscious. But in terms of Satanism, this is where it comes together, which is that the Satanists, they have an opposite view of reality than the one that I'm saying. That's why they use the inverted pentagram. So, right, a pentagram, you know what a pentagram looks like? It's like a star, right? So the pentagram has the point at the top, right? And so the unity of the pentagram then comes down into four other points, right? So it's like 1 to 4. It's like a pyramid, right? So you have unity and multiplicity below. And what the Satanist has an intuition of is that it actually is upside down. It's like unity comes from multiplicity, right? So multiplicity and division and individuality is the source of unity, right? You could say e pluribus unum, right? Like this idea that facts create value, right? You could say that when someone believes that facts create value, they're for all intents and purposes a Satanist. Like they're not really a Satanist in the like, the religious sense, but that's the philosophy that the Satanists come up with. The Satanists will say that they don't believe in Satan. They're materialists for all intents and purposes, right? They're secularists because they believe that the truest aspect is the factuality of the world, and that the unities are derived from that factuality. And so you have this kind of inverted structure. And so there's a kind of coherence to satanic symbolism, which nobody totally came up with. It's like something that is that kind of emerges out of the logic of these analogies together.
So the proper upright version of that symbol would have facts and materialism at the bottom.
You would have matter at the bottom. So you would have yin at the bottom, which is something like potentiality at the bottom. And then you would have yang at the top as identity and heaven and purpose and hierarchy, is that which organizes multiplicity and variability and change into unitary beings, right?
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and so that's actually the way that it works. Now, this is but it's important to understand that the intuition that what we call the left hand occultists or the left hand people, their intuition, which finds itself in some esoteric kind of thinking, but then also in tantrism and these types of schools, let's say, is that the best image of the infinite is not the one. The best image of the infinite is actually, let's say, something like the fact that you can't totally contain things into unity. So the best image of the infinite is something like the residue, something like the remainder, something like the exception, the ambiguous, and so that's why left hand type of spirituality looks the way that it does, that it's dark, it's sinful, it's about the androgynous, it's about ambiguity, it's about all of these things. But the truth is that without unity, all these characteristics, they are the devil for all intents and purposes. They are Satan because they devour the world, right? They will eat up the world. They'll destroy the world. The world cannot exist through the left-hand path. It's actually a world-destroying philosophy. It's very dangerous.
I think you just helped me make a connection. Maybe I got this wrong, but I see a lot of images of like prophets, and they'll have a right hand up and a left hand down. Is that
well?
incorrect?
So Christ, ultimately that's an image of Christ, right? So Christ, if you look, for example, at the 13th century Duomo in Italy, in Florence, right? So in Florence, Italy, there's a baptistry, and you have a very beautiful image of that, which is Christ as the judge of the world, and then Christ is having his hand up and his right hand up and his left hand down because he's rising up people with the right. He's bringing the sheep in, and then he's pushing away the goats, and so that is a kind of ancient Christian traditional structure. There's a kind of weird perversion of that in occultism, right? So in the figure of Baphomet, for example, the figure that was promulgated by Eliphas Levi, which is a very famous figure. You probably have seen it. It's like an androgynous being with a goat head and with like breasts and like a caduceus between its legs. And that figure is also doing that, making that gesture, which is a strange kind of inversion of the traditional image, which is actually Christ who does that.
Well, inverting symbols seems to be a common theme of postmodernism now.
Oh, for sure.